So, I've just spent the last 2 nights sleeping in the hostel on the top floor of this 19th century Hungarian apartment building. And I'm just checking out now to spend the last night here before I get an bus to Cluj. As you can see, this building has seen better days. But once, during the glory days of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it will have housed maybe 1, 2 aristocratic families, very wealthy. However, after the fall of the Austro-Hungarian Empire from a crushing defeat after the First World War, and further misfortune when the Hungarians faced another crushing defeat in the Second World War, the communist regime took power in Hungary, influenced by Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union. And families that once lived in these grand apartment buildings were thrown out, their statues destroyed, their riches and luxury items stolen and taken away, and in 10, 20 working class families were moved in. In the years since the fall of the communist regime, they are now housing hostels, doctors' offices and private residents. However, there's a lot of maintenance work that needs to be done on all these buildings dotted all across Budapest. Simply not affordable for many of its residents, who meet together once a year, often in the courtyards or in an office, to discuss which repairs are most vital. There's always 1 or 2 residents that simply don't have the money, and as such the repair work is never done. It falls into further disrepair, and the problems only exacerbate. It's a shame, because these buildings really are beautiful. As I step out to the streets, you can see around us many other similar buildings, also constructed around the same time. Now, also housing private residents, offices, cafes, shops, all still very beautiful, but in need of serious work. Sometimes, in adverse weather conditions, such as strong winds, little bits of brick can fall from the roofs, which can be quite dangerous. You'll often see bits of stone laying around on the floor. There's none around just here, but earlier on my walks, I saw such signs of decay and erosion in the buildings. What's the solution? Well, obviously, money, which many people don't have. Hungary is not as rich as it used to be. In fact, it's one of the poorest countries in the European Union. Budapest may still look very wealthy, but that's because of its many expats. Anyway, now I've 12 hours to kill before I catch my night bus to Cluj. As I walk through the busy, bustling streets of Pest, I just wanted to share what I thought was quite an amusing story from the hostel. There are 3 people, including me, staying in the dormitory, and one of them was a rather large and boisterous American guy with a southern twang and a penchant for being really drunk at 7 in the morning. He would come in at that time, thunderously march around the room and bathroom, make strange groaning sounds in his sleep, often clap his feet together. All in all, a reminder that you sometimes have to take the rough with the smooth when staying in a cheap hostel. Another courtyard that once belonged to the wealthy aristocrats of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. I mean, I think this is a private residential place, so I'll make it brief, but just to give you an idea where the wealthy had their courtyards. One family would have lived there, one family there. Now, it's become a whole apartment complex. There's hundreds, thousands of these dotted all around the city. Look what I've just found as I was walking around exploring, looking for 19th century courtyards. A big pop-art style mural of the Rubik's Cube, accompanied by a quote in Hungarian, which I won't attempt to pronounce nor translate, given I have 0 language skills, from none other than Rubik, who, you may know, invented the Rubik's Cube, which is the best-selling puzzle toy in the world, even today. On an unbeaten run of 24 games, the Olympic champions and the best team in the world at the time, Hungary, on the 25th November 1953, played England in football, of course, in what is known as the match of the century, and beat them 6-3. Here is a very imposing and impressive mural honouring that, with what I imagine is a real-life newspaper clipping painted onto the side of this building. As an Englishman, I should show distaste towards this mural, but I don't really care about footballs. This statue is one of many monuments and also buildings dotted around the city to pay tribute to the famed Princess Zizi, an Austro-Hungarian princess who, unusual to the aristocracy at the time, was sympathetic to the plight of the Hungarians in the wake of their loss for the war for independence. Hungarian, being a very difficult language to learn, made it all the more astounding to the Hungarian people when she actually learnt fluent Hungarian in just 2 years, or apparently she did anyhow. The rest of the aristocracy were displeased with her sympathy towards the Hungarian people, and as such spread nasty rumours to damage her reputation. They said she was very promiscuous and slept around with Hungarian servants, among a number of other nasty rumours. Eventually she developed very weird habits in terms of extreme exercise. She would exercise up to 3 hours a day and then ride a horse for another hour and a half. Eventually she was murdered by an Italian anarchist. She was stabbed in the chest. It took her 4 hours to bleed out due to the extremely tight corset that she was wearing, keeping her blood inside. Making my way through the Astoria subway, I think I've come across the location of another Austro-Hungarian courtyard which we can take a look at. One that we can actually enter, so you can get an idea of one of these courtyards as they used to be. Yellow represents the colour of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. These tiles can become quite problematic in winter conditions because they're quite slippy, but they can't be removed. They're preserved due to their historical significance. These hundreds of years old. Here is another courtyard from the Austro-Hungarian apartment complex. These wooden tiles are a form of soundproofing, designed so that when horses passed through, it wouldn't wake the neighbours, as they often go through here. As you can see, it's retained the same structure, but since fallen into disrepair. Now, it houses a COVID testing lab, an escape room, a cafe. It houses a furniture repair shop, an antique shop, and many private residents. As you can see, bits of the building are road and fall off, making it a little bit dangerous. In recent winds, some of these apartments have 100-year-old windows that have shattered due to the pressure. In a courtyard just like this, once a year, the residents would gather and have meetings to decide what they're going to fund next, what repairs that they're going to fund next. Of course, there's always one or two residents, as I mentioned earlier, that won't be able to afford the repair work. And as such, the disrepair just becomes greater and more expensive. Built in the 1800s, according to the plans of Viennese architect Ludwig Forster, in a Moorish revival style, the synagogue I just showed you is the largest in all of Europe and the second largest in the world. In 1939, it was bombed by pro-Nazi forces, then used as a German radio base and a stable during World War II. In the 1990s, it was reconstructed to its former glory, but has been used as a prayer centre for the Jewish community of Pest since the communist regime. It's quite impressive and unique in its design. It looks kind of like North African because of its Moorish style, unlike any other synagogue I've seen, at least in Europe. Very impressive. The Bitcoin bar bar that accepts payment in Bitcoin. So any of you drunken crypto enthusiasts with Bitcoin riches to spare, when you're in Budapest, that should be your local haunt. First to work exploring the Austro-Hungarian history of Pest, so I stopped in for a cherry beer at a local bar overlooking Main Street. I might continue filming shortly. Just now ordering a cheese langosh, a traditional Hungarian street food made from fried dough, often with cheese and bacon and other such things. It's probably the most famous street food here in Hungary, and I've never tried one yet, so I'm looking forward to this. But here it is. Langosh. I paid 800 forints for this, which I think is just about £1.80. It's good. It's like, kind of like a donut, but a bit more savoury. So the cheese, which is gradually just kind of melting out. It's literally just come out of the deep fat fryer, so it's really quite hot. Nice little street snack. Not recommended for anybody on a diet. It's a decadent treat. £1.80, I mean, it's the size of a pizza. I ate about half of the langosh. To be honest, there's only so much fried dough and grated cheese that you can eat in one sitting. I probably should have got it with sour cream and bacon. I think that would have been a lot better. But to be honest, I had exactly 800 forints in loose change that I wanted to get rid of. So I opted for just the plain cheese. The Hungarians have a very good solution for disused buildings where they can't find any other purpose. They turn them into bars, of course. This used to genuinely be a bus terminal. Now it's a nightclub by the same name, since they moved the current terminal to a location that was better for traffic. And just over here, I'll show you, is what looks like a pool of water, and it is, but underneath is actually an underground club. You should be able to see it from here. And that's the entrance. One of the most famous things in Budapest nightlife are the ruin bars dotted across the city. Ruin bars are disused apartments that became hip and trendy bars for tourists and locals alike to party. So yeah, it's a very good solution. If you've got a disused building, turn it into a bar. Now, I can't say I'm a great fan of the man's legacy, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless. There was a statue of the controversial US President Ronald Reagan. It's here to symbolise him walking from the direction of the Hungarian Parliament to the American Embassy, just over that gate over there, if you can see it. He's walking with good news. The Cold War is over, and as such, Hungarian and US relations can now be strengthened. Although, something funny of note, Ronald Reagan was allegedly only 6 foot tall. For context, I'm 6'3". I think his height has been embellished just a little bit. Although 6 foot is no dwarf by any means, it's an inaccurate statue and representation of him. Memorial to the victims of the German occupation. It was erected in the middle of the night in 2014 in hopes of curbing mass protests. The Jewish community find it absolves the Hungarians for being complicit in the Holocaust and for their collaborations with Nazi Germany. And as such, the statue has been vandalised over time, and a protest memorial has been placed just at the foot of the original by members of the Jewish community, providing some historical context of Hungary's involvement.
We got so much money in the internet, in the boat.
Sort of aimlessly wandering now, close to the Duna River. On the other side, you can see Buda. I haven't yet explored Buda. I'm going to save that for the 2 days I return to the city, after I've completed my journey through Romania. I figured a couple of days here in Pest and a couple of days over there in Buda, split evenly. Here I am in the Budapest Central Market Hall. It sells a number of products from meats, local produce, wines. This kind of reminds me of the Central Market in Riga. A little bit smaller, a little bit less busy. Nonetheless, interesting. Produce, peppers. Very nice. Food, yeah. Sit upstairs. The upstairs section is definitely for the tourists. There was a number of badges and ripples and things adorning the Soviet emblem. I doubt there's many locals rushing to put those on the jackets. So yeah, that's to cater for the tourists for sure. They must be sold quite begrudgingly by market traders, many of whom were old enough to remember the communist regime. Stopped into the local convenience store for a good ice-cold pint can of chaperone. This was, I think, less than £1. I can't remember exactly. I'm still getting used to the conversion rates of forints and pounds, but yeah, I'm pretty sure. Good stuff. So, I have about 6 hours, maybe, remaining until I have to catch my bus to Cluj. And I'm in Cadarca Wine Bistro, one of the top rated wine bars in all of Budapest, right here around the Jewish quarter. And this is my third glass of wine that I'm sampling right now. I mean, the menu in this place is really extensive. There's over 100 wines available. Yeah, really good. I'm hoping to find something to eat soon. So after visiting the wine bar, I found one of the top rated restaurants in all of Pest. Eager to try it myself, I decided to hop in a bolt, get myself a table. Unfortunately, there was a sign outside telling me that it was fully booked. Another solo diner went in before me and was turned away to confirm that it was indeed fully booked. Even solo diners couldn't get a table, so I'm now approaching Liberty Square with an empty stomach. I'm hoping the night can be saved and that I can find something to eat. I hope I don't have to sell for the kebab. I had a kebab for my first night here. I want some good Hungarian food. And good Hungarian food I did manage to find. It was pretty decent and fairly well priced. I'm showing you a little bit of the footage I recorded, however I had to delete the audio because copyrighted music was playing in the bar. This was something I foolishly only realised after the fact. Anyway, it's not so important, at least you can see what I was eating. Very friendly taxi ride. Funnily enough, as I'm leaving Hungary, I've just met the friendliest Hungarian on my last 2 days, waiting for my bus to Cluj. And I'm going to sleep on that bus. I've had a few drinks, as you can probably tell by my demeanour and the way that I am butchering everything I say, even more so than I usually do. No, this is it until I arrive in Cluj, and then that will be another video. Thanks for watching. I hope it was interesting seeing things about the Austro-Hungarian Empire, about communist Hungary, and just seeing me saunter around Pest and have a good time.